It's time to adapt your wall. So today we're going to talk about how we can overcome adversity and changes as orc players as we adapt our walls. Some initial thoughts as for the missions, our new enemies, and so much more. Then we also have a tier list that we're going to end this off with as well. So with that being said, it's war for the live stream because of course this is live. So I will be reading the comments and everything at the end. And so let's get into it, lads, as it's time to adapt and overcome. But of course, we have to give a shout out to our paint competition. Remember, the entries are due January 25th, and this month is actually the Stampa. So if you haven't participated or seen that, check that out because that is provided to you by our sponsors, the Baron of Dice. So, Baron of Dice make high quality custom dice. And if you enjoy our content and want to show some love, check out the Baron of Dice, an official wall tactic, high quality custom dice to support us and use the discount code in the description because nobody likes taxes. Of course, check out Forgefire Gaming as they offer a competitive balanced terrain set that I use at home. It's pre-painted, slotted acrylic bases, allowing for easy terrain removal, alignment without sliding off the base itself. So check out those sponsors. So of course, I want to say what's up to you, Gits. Here we go, here we go, here we go. Yeah, what's up? That was perfect timing. Positive vibe, Merc. Yeah, it's I haven't heard that in a minute since I first started 40K. That was a great way to start this off. So I'm actually quite excited. You know, even though there was a lot of doom and gloom, I guess there's something about just being an orc and my mindset as orcs that we're kind of the underdogs going in anyways, and it's time to overcome. So I'm pretty excited to see how we adapt and actually, develop our backbones here. So I want to kind of give a little bit of chat to the latest mission pack, the challenger cards, the new enemies, as in, the factions that are coming out via codexes or got new codexes, orcs at our lowest, and what is old is once again new, right? So for the latest mission pack, people are questioning how do orcs really fit into here and how do we feel about this? We're gonna have a video next Friday with Mark Perry where we're really gonna get into it. It's going to be one of our long streams, as you guys know. But for this one, for the most part, as I've been playing and reviewing it, the mission changes to secondaries are even easier for orcs. It's a lot. You're not as spread out across the table. A lot of the time, you can actually focal in the middle table. You're sitting stuff like display of might as secondaries. When you're getting something like marked for death, you can actually beta choose a target so that you can. I was not called a beta, but I'm calling it a beta. But you can choose in a secondary fourth target as yourself and pick more points from that. I've been finding that scoring the second and the randomness from the card is not as annoying, and that's what most people are kind of understanding, which is good for you as an org player because for the most part we're already kind of dominating on primary if we're kind of implementing our will. So the card's not holding us back from creating more of that point gap from our style of attrition, right? I'm generalizing. I'm most orcs here and archetypes that we know about, but we do play an attrition-based army where we're willing to lose all our assets to just deny the enemy at all costs, even if it's not about killing them and to every one of their units, right? So the latest mission pack, which not making the cards so random, actually develops better for the orcs. The challenger card, though, on the other hand, can either give some really random or odd moments based off the cards themselves. Some of them we can appreciate. Sure, I would love if my Gorkanaut can randomly run through terrain, or if I get an additional 6-inch movement. But in reality, orcs don't necessarily like when the enemy can make up for the fact that we are dominating in the scoreboard. So that is yet to be unfolded, right? There's a lot of different mindsets here. That's why we're letting it unfold another week, as week by week, everybody's kind of playing this more and they're understanding challenger cards. For the most part, they seem to be accepted by the community, but the pros and cons of it starting to come out, the more people are getting familiar with it. So that's why I want to save it for one more week when we talk about Mark Perry, because as me and him were talking too, we were like, well, we need some reps here. But challenger cards pose an interest, and yet some odd games, which actually orcs tend to like, right? Because we love to kind of thrive in the random chaoticness that can be battle and warfare. So, and then as for the new enemies, right, we have Death Guard getting their book, looking silly right now at the moment of this recording, but that can change, of course, because points and GW sometimes heavy-handed, so we never know. Don't want Death Guard to be heavy-handed, just saying. Then we have Emperor's Children that seem like they've come down and gotten a little bit more in line. They don't have as many assets. I think for the most part, Death Guard, yes. If you fall back on, what is once again new, as in War Horde is getting pushed to the forefront, Orks falling back on melee, the bread and butter, the beast bosses, the knobs, the boys, the war bosses, the gas, all of these things aren't really ideal into what's coming with Death Guard and such, right? But I do think that we still have time to see how GW handles them, and if the points do get kind of put in this proper placing, Orcs can still beat them based off mission play themselves as well. But we have to see how that develops. As for Emperor's Children, I think we actually have a solid game into them as War Horde players, or for the most part, remember we're going to talk about all the detachments today, but them not having a lot of assets is their weak. Being soft as butter is their weakness. Not necessarily having a ton of shooting. They do have shooting, but they have, they want to get in combat just as much, right? They don't have high strength. There's certain archetypes and detachments that we run about battle wagons or Morkanauts and Gorkanauts, so they don't necessarily always have the assets to pop everything that they want. That becomes a really skill-based battle because they still do have the ability to get the initiative on you, right? As for World Eaters, Thousand Suns, you can see with these armies what we're really noticing, well, I guess along with Death Guard too, is a lot of demon princes coming to the forefront, a lot of MSU transport, bringing out these kind of death ball that have good solid volume of mid-strength attacks, whether it's maybe as a berserker brick with some sort of leader, or maybe Karn's on his own, and those additional as well. You got the Hellbrutes running around, Mauler Fiends, Forge Fiends with moderate shooting, that Orcs are going to come to adapt, but we already kind of had a lot of those tools to deal with those issues in our basic War Horde style archetypes. Now we are going to hit all these detachments pretty much with their own videos on their own to kind of break them down anyways, and we're going to get them quicker involved in that, by the way. So I'm not going to unpack every detachment to a ridiculous asset today at this moment, but we're speaking in general terms here. I think Orcs do kind of generally good against these kind of new style of armies that are coming out. But we also have Thousand Suns, right? Thousand Suns is a tricky one because they always go from ridiculously powerful to moderately mid tier, right? But Orcs, regardless if Thousand Suns were at their peak or not, always had some kind of interesting gameplay with just truck spam, having a lot of assets, and just any of our low kind of middling assets have the ability to kill them, whether it's just a 10-man unit of boys, whether it's a 5-man unit of knobs and a war boss can just disrupt their army if they make contact when they want to at will. With again our basic understanding of War Horde, what it's been using, bread and butter, index, what you can find anywhere online that has been doing good, is still relatively interesting with War Horde, which means we generally have a good game into most of these factions. So as a whole, even though Orcs are looking upon themselves saying, well, we got hit with the nerf, it's kind of annoying, where do we sit here? I think Orcs, even though we are brought down to our lowest, we still have quite good play into what's at its peak, right? And for not always about the army is necessarily the best, it's what it's ready kind of preying on, what's best into can be a factor, right? And Orcs tend to generally do good into elite armies that are trying to kind of get stuck in with them and play the midfield battle with them, because as we do compete and going toe-to-toe with them in combat, trading with something like Fight on Death, or having the ability to make take the initiative from them with Waaagh and our whole army advancing and charging, we also have a lot of assets and ability to kind of still play the mission, which means as the secondaries, like I said earlier, are kind of more reliable, it means that we get to throw up the scorecard even if we are in a tough fight. And then when I talk about what is old, once again new, as I was looking at War Horde, we're going to be showing, as I'm talking about some of these adaptations, are things we've seen in the past as Orc players that I kind of want to bring more to the forefront. And then some of these are actually new adaptations and developments. So what I'm going to talk about here are some of the most popular, people have been suggesting or considering these changes, but there's a lot more than this. Remember, it's a live chat. You guys can participate if you see anything that I'm missing here, but these are the most popular ones that you see online or in discussions or in live chats on what people are just, what they want to consider when adapting their Waaghs. And so I'm going to talk about these kind of these units, and they can be these audible changes in this and the archetypes that we've seen, right? If you look at what's in the past, what has been good prior, can I substitute some of these things? Or even if you've seen a prior detachment video, can I substitute some of the things that I've seen there that were a prior point cost that I kind of still want to use? So any pros, cons to that, not necessarily saying you should or should do all these things, but I want to really give sense on what I really think about these, comparisons and what people should do. Whoa, to the live chat. Yeah, I see you guys are popping. What's going on? A lot of good new people here. What's up, Dark Plagueis? Bully Boys. Oh, okay, that's what I'm talking about. You still like Bully Boys? What's up, Steve Goodrich? Christian. Whoa. And so remember, guys, this is live. So we have first, but what I consider one of the most interesting and actually most popular changes we're going to end up seeing is the Big Mac versus the shock attack gun. If you check out other videos, we were already alluding to this having to come into play. And I think it's more interesting than people first look to. Of course, there's the obvious weakness of there is not -4 AP and there's less amount of shots, potentially, because if you're taking the Big Mac with custom Mega Blaster on the, he's gonna only have 3 shots compared to a shock attack gun that's gonna have D6+1. But the comparison there's more than that when I talk about the combined arms asset to it and the units that are attaching to this. So starting off is the points. 70 points versus 85 points. 15 points is actually quite significant. That's the difference of sometimes enhancements or the end of capping off your list. Do I think you're going to substitute all of your shock attack guns? No, of course not. This comes down to when you're getting to that point of redundancy in unit combinations, whether it's a dread mob, a more Dakka style, the units that typically the detachments typically lean into this, you would be considering one Big Mac sometimes. Specifically, what I'm thinking about is Dread Bomb, Gift Finder goggles, put the looters on him. And when I speak of combined arms assets, right, there is play, and there has been play, where you can stick Big Mac on a 5-man unit of looters, maybe in tactical, where you make him give that unit +1 to hit, and they run up the field and fight. And then you can also, of course, use a street PP to give it strats plus sustain and make it kind of like a combat unit. You can play More Dakka and end up using it for re-rolling wounds when you get into combat with this unit. Dread Mob itself, there is play when you have the Tank Buster combined with this unit, because this actual Pulsar Rocket giving this guy an additional AP is nice, but keep in mind, he still gets the D6 damage. And he's tougher than a shock attack gun. Plus, into, let's say you're a demon heavy meta where there's a lot of big demon players, as well as I do, that when you're shooting these greater demons and they fail the battle shock, they're gonna end up healing themselves. Not necessarily ideal. So if you swap to your Big Macs, you might actually be getting away from some of those silly interactions as well. But is combat capability comes into play. A lot of people already like to say, I want to hammer on my Tank Buster squad. Well, stick this guy on there with the driller for 3 damage or on a power claw. Far more interesting to charge into combat than with simply a shock attack gun. So he's a good audible to change into. He does bring his combat. People always go, well, 1-for-1 in shooting, he's not worth it. That's not his point. He has more interest in that than he can do. More viability in that. I mean, he has a 3-up armor save. He has 6 wounds. He can either end up being on his own, like I spoke prior about that 5-man unit of looters, for example. He can end up just being on his own, kind of existing and causing the enemies kind of to deal with him on himself. So definitely consider the Big Mac, whether you're taking Tank Busters or looters in these changes to your More Dakka, Dread Mob, or Tactical Brigade list. Now, the next one that I really like is the Beast Snagger Boys versus the Boys. So we're seeing here that we have 190 points versus 170. So now there's only a 20-point difference, right? And we're looking at the straight data sheet of a Snagger. You have +1 strength, you have a 6-up feel no pain, and you have the ability to re-roll hits against vehicles and monsters. The benefit you get of Boys are you get 2 leaders. And of course, if this is excluding Green Tide. Of course, Green Tide on itself is going to figure its own thing out that's specific. But when I'm talking about a bunch of different archetypes exist in different detachments that will fall back on a unit of boys, or that a lot of the time, which was a War Boss and a Pain Boy. Well, the cheaper option here, instead of taking a 2 leaders and a 170 point mob unit, you can take a already stronger, more respectable data sheet in itself, and then just stick a beast boss on there for just a straight nice cost of 270 points. That also offsets the cost of the battle wagon. You understand this package itself is already super expensive between the 2 characters, the 20 boys, and the wagon. It becomes almost a quarter of your army at times. And in this case, this helps kind of set that back, right? You're already paying more for your trucks and forever, whatever else might be on your list that you already have. you already need to look for more cuts in that. So if you are already falling back on a unit of boys for that mid-table bullying, remember, if you're falling back on War Horde and you're considering Gaz now to play, Gaz and the Snaggle Boys are amazing at killing things like greater demons, Katans, stuff that doesn't necessarily always have great saves, that starts at the 3-up armor save and gets taken to a 4. You're going to crack that Unbridled Carnage, critical 5+ lethal sustain on that. Of course, you can consider this for the hunt if you're someone who wants to try to hunt as well. No reason Gaz can try this as well. But you can get that combination of I'm re-rolling, fishing for 5, 6s on hits and just put massive volume of punches on these units. Higher toughness enemies are existing in the meta, whether it's 6 toughness, 6 death guard, in just world eaters themselves running around with chaos spawn and they're 8 bound, like we were speaking of. These are armies that are already having a more innate toughness that are kind of being pushed forward. We see Tyranids kind of coming up, already getting cost deficiency, coming cutbacks. So the difference in strength of 4 to 5 matters. So in that case, I do really like the audible change, the shift from, if you've seen lists in the past that you really liked, or you've been kind of messing with lists already, consider swapping to 20 Snaggers and a Beast Boss. I promise you won't hate it. It actually feels quite good. Of course, you're going to miss a couple. The Uri Syringe, you're going to miss the 5-up Feel No Pain, because it's not as good as a 6-up Feel No Pain. You miss a couple power call punches. But all in all, you get a lot of good benefits from it. And it is something I really consider. Then we go to Storm Boys versus Def Copters. Let's go. They've entered that. I'll consider you because you're really cheap category. They are in contention because they do have deep strike / fly, just like the Storm Boys. Of course, we know they have infantry. Boys can move through infantry where they can move. Storm Boys can move through infantry, move through terrain because they have the infantry keyword, and Copters are vehicles. So they have to fly up, over, and then down to get over the terrain pieces themselves. So it takes away from their mobility, right? But what is the utility that both of these units bring, right? Because I don't think they're ideally and necessarily a swap in all cases. Storm Boys a lot of the time are, because they have more mobility, they can end up scoring secondaries easier, getting in positions that more reliably because they're smaller in deep strike profile, and that 15-point cost sometimes really does matter. Just like I said for the Big Mac with shock attack gun, people overlook it and they're like, I'd really like Coptas, but I can't fit them on my points for where they're at. So they just end up sticking with Storm Boys because you're still looking for that. I really just need secondaries and the speed from this unit. Doesn't really matter about the other assets they bring. But what about the other assets they bring? The flexibility of this unit, right? Well, Def Copters, are actually able to kill stuff, interact with enemies, tag targets, and not just get picked up from a couple of bolter shots, for example. And that can really go far in the game itself. The fact that you actually have a target that, even if the enemy themselves don't know the actual output here, and your Def Copters are kind of going to flip, they're going to not really do or hit or shoot anything. But when you tell them that profile at D3 blast, strength 9 -2, flat 3 damage, twin link, they're immediately thinking, oh, this can just pop off and end up killing me. And a lot of my 3-wound infantry, 2-wound infantry that I care about, I might lose half the wounds on one of my vehicles a little too early just because this 180-point unit got a couple lucky hit rolls, since its strength is already respectable and it's at a high damage plus its twin link. So that already gives the psychological aspect of what it actually imposes when it imposes itself on the battlefield. It can run into T3 units and get good punches off with its high amount of punches it has. It has mortal wound potential between its grenade, its ability to fly over you. If we're talking about cult of speed, for example, you can reactive move and fly back over someone and put mortal wounds on them again. So all in all, it's the difference between this unit goes much further than I'm just looking at it because they both have deep strike and they both want to fly and shoot. So if your list is already built into, I'm falling back into maybe a walker style army where I already have, or bikers or Coptas, whatever. I guess you already have Coptas, right? Maybe let's say More Dakka, Dread Mom style, maybe even the Hunt style, and you want some deep strike. There's a lot of things that already have respectable toughness on that field, whether it's Squig Hog Boys, whether it's other maybe Killicans, Gorkanauts, weird things like that. People don't really always have the tools to start picking up all these ablative wound Def Coptas, right? That's the strength in there. And if you are already that style of army where you already have a good amount of strength, toughness, then hey, just kind of build more of that into your list. Keep that that style and that fundamental backbone of your list, because it'll take you further. And if you're looking into, I already have a lot of small assets, I may be already tactical heavy and I'm tactical brigade, I'm already quite heavy on my assets of characters and killing potential, I need as cheap as possible, I need mobility, I need flexibility, well then Storm Boys might be your answer. Of course, you already get to pick them up, they have potential in there. So context always matters, and it's not always that linear of well, they both fly, and or they're really only 15 points apart. One's tougher, one's killy, well, one's faster, and one's easier to move. Always take into consideration what the rest of your list has, what you're going into in your meta as a whole, and I think both are very, very viable and respectable to bring. So if you're flexing into Snagas, Storm Boys or Kaptas, just take that advice. And then we move to the question that everybody's mind: what about Squighog Boys? Are they legit at all? Can I fit them into my list? Am I a copium? I'm with you. I'm kind of on the copium, right? The fact that the bomb squigs themselves aren't as good. You actually have to see your target is kind of annoying. It's on a 3+ now. It's quite annoying. You have to do it one at a time. It's quite annoying. But all in all, I do have some hopes for the hunt. So I think if you're someone who's looking to play the hunt, you can flex into it. And if you're someone who's really playing casual play, the toughness, the fact that you get your 5-up invuln on the Waaagh and the feel no pain means Squig and the volume attack Squighog Boys have. If you're playing just a straight up War Horde and you feel like playing your squigs, I'm not going to tell you not to. Artist nails them. They got the 5-up invuln, get up the field, get stuck in, fight on death, critical unbridled carnage. You can have a great time with them. We're just speaking matter of fact. If you're someone who's going to events, you're going to have a harder time making these guys work. And it is still at a point that I wouldn't consider really in any of my lists unless I was doing specifically the hunt. And we'll talk about that as we talk about the tier list. So now I'm going to give my initial thoughts for the detachment tier list and where I have these things. Remember, what's up, live chat? What do you guys got to say about my rankings and where things are? If you want to disagree, go ahead. I'll fight with you on stream right now. No, I'm just kidding. Well, we'll go back and forth as and we'll discuss this. But I did give it some thoughts. And mind you, I'm not someone that's going to tell you any of these detachments are unplayable or that any of the detachments are straight up not worth your time. I think every person has the ability to, the battlefield and their own meta and what's going on around them and determine how much do I have to tech into what's known or what's my preference and what's already in my collection, and then kind of choose their thing from there. But it does come with context, and it does come with the fact that there are consequences for our actions if we place certain detachments, right? So some are just significantly better and going to be more viable for the time being. So that with being said, let's just break it down. When I have tier 1, we're talking about GT event, 60 player plus super majors, but also that you're the type of person that's going to put the reps in to want to actually win this event. You're going to be prepping, you're going to be looking at the mission, things like that. So for itself, I would say right off the bat, we have War Horde sticking to its fundamentals. The strengths of War Horde itself, I think right now in the meta are, honestly, it's fight on death. The fact that it's good on the clock, right? If you're someone who is playing multiple games or multiple days in a row, War Horde is something that you can implement your game plan and just stick to it and constantly kind of get value out of understanding your game plan and setting it up. Because looking at all the new codexes and rules that are coming out, if you are someone that's trying to be a little bit more cunning and thoughtful, more thoughts to consideration because you're more of a defensive player and kind of reactionary player, that on itself is going to kind of put you back, as the meta already is unknown. The mission pack itself and how the pace of the game and tempo might be is unknown. How you go into certain armies and your familiarity with those armies is still too unknown. So I think just the familiarity of War Horde itself is a really important strength, and the fact that you're really implementing your will. And for some of these other rankings and armies, I've picked that as well for their placing because they have the ability to do it as well. But War Horde, based off its trading potential, to saying it can get stronger, have more durability and increase its offensive potential, will get stronger, means honestly it goes a long way. And it really didn't get changed by the point changes. So nothing new there, but I'm definitely someone who we're going to cover that detachment real soon here. For anybody who's new or intermediate, wants questions, answers, yes, we're going to figure it out. And Gaz definitely has his place. But then we also move to Green Tide. Again, the context that you're someone that's going to put the gameplay time, whether it's on TTS, locally, you have the models already, you're a Green Tide player. I think Green Tide players themselves understand that they are kind of that what is it known unknown factor when you go into an event for enemy players. They aren't specifically thinking about, I'm going to run into a horde style army of orcs, just like people wouldn't think Gene Stealers necessarily. A lot of the people are attacking for vehicles, monsters, demons, stuff like that. And so when they run into a game of, I have to kill a lot of bodies with a lot of high OC, with good shenanigans to get into combat, mobility around the field, getting long bomb charges on, really getting off and taking board control with a whole bunch of mobs advancing and charging and kind of stopping me in my place, is something that most people are just not expecting, right? How important are your foul blight spawn, your foul blight drones, when mobs of boys are just charging and tagging them all? Sure, you have your 3 to 6 Death Shroud cleaving through them, but you're losing on primary. You probably lost on board control because you're further back than you wanted to be. And for the most part, you're still losing models at an acceptable rate for the orc player when it comes to attrition in Green Tide. So I think Green Tide has a great spot. The mission changes themselves. The fact that you can be more compact with your mobs is really nice. So I might start experimenting with that again. Get some battle wagons in play. Let's go. And then we move on to tier 2. Tier 2 is a lot of the time where my heart lies as an orc player, and a lot of my fellow gets to do too, right? Because we just want to play with what we really enjoy and make them work. So maybe my tier 2 list is a little too subjective and fun, but hey, this is actually how I feel, so I'm keeping it real. So we have Tactical Brigade. I think Tactical Brigade, because of its redeployment shenanigans, the fact that it can still do its thing, right? The fact you can still make your tank busters +1 to hit, completely annihilate people. You can still have multiple units of good old fashion snagger boys and trucks running around the field, implementing their will, doing shenanigans with picking up units late game. It's going to be a great time with Tactical Brigade and the flexibility of an orc player if they really want to figure it out. But I do think it's starting to reach its limitations, and it might even fall lower into the bottom of tier 2, or maybe even to tier 3 when we literally look at the meta unpack. Like, as armies can really pressure you, whether it's World Eaters, Emperor's Children, we're going to see with Tyranids coming up, it might be a factor that the whole Tactical Brigades factor of, I just am pretty low on assets now and I'm just a bunch of T5 bodies and trucks, might not really have its place going forward. So this was something that I did go back and forth on, but all in all, still has a lot of killing play. And sometimes that's an easy way to just get your dubs because people want to go toe-to-toe and bang it out, and Tactical Brigade can still bring it, but in a cunning way. Then we go to Dread Mob. I think Dread Mob is one of those sleeper kind of build armies that when someone's really committed to playing it, but also that they're just having a good time with their Stompa, they could really make it shine at GTs, RTT events, right? It's really interesting because I think the Stompa is really what we're going to see more at GTs. Maybe some knot spam going on where people are going to start taking multiple big knots. As you can see, the Knights have come down in toughness. Now, Gorkanaut and Morkanaut being T12 does look a little interesting. It's something different now. People aren't going to be tooling for high such toughness necessarily in the same way. Plus, the threat that it brings itself means knots themselves are, being considered a little bit more. But all in all, Dread Mob can always shine and kind of stick out. I'm personally a fan, so maybe it needs to be a little lower on this list, but that's just how I feel. Then we move into Cult of Speed. So I do think Cult of Speed changes were enough to take it out of tier 3 passion tier. I think people who, and it's kind of like a weird way to say it because yes, the people who have the correct models to play Cult of Speed are already passionate. Of course, your red ones go faster. You guys are all wild. But I do mean to the sense that it's worth people who already have Cult of Speed collections, such as myself, to take it off the shelf, dust it off, and try to get some. And I think the pressure and tempo of game that it places on the enemy is quite valuable in the game. The point cost of buggies themselves and copters and bikes is at the right cost to really hold people at a tar pit kind of level, but still have access to what orcs rely on with our killing potential. Maybe whether you stick a gas on your list, I know it's easy, but it happens. 10-man units of knobs with war bosses, breaker boys, beasts, earlier mentioned beast boss with snaggas coming out of a wagon with faster than use, sticking to maybe Other interesting units in there with trucks where you can use the mech to give them firing deck and have the potential of tank busters shooting out of vehicles. I think Cult of Speed has a lot to unpack because anytime your army gets full advance and charge for all those speed free keywords, and it still at least has the enhancement, plus our other just innate solid data sheets that still exist, I think Cult of Speed is going to find a way to kind of make a splash here and there for those guys who really understand how that detachment works and understand how the enemy might not. The enemy might know you're still an orc and understand that you still have a Waaagh, but not understand how weak the Cult of Speed Waaagh actually is. Right? they don't necessarily know that even though an orc's still an orc, when he's hitting on 4s with 1 AP and low amount of attacks, it doesn't feel that good, So Cult of Speed combat might not be too impressive to you as the orc player because you're used to Bully Boys, used to War Horde, but the enemy has to take it into consideration. A Tau is still a Tau, right? A Umi's still a Umi, an Eldar still an Eldar. So your Cult of Speed units are still tough enough to win the skirmish matchup, pick up people's assets, and then have enough things left over to tar pit the enemy's remaining killing units and win on the mission. So Cult of Speed will definitely have play, but I do also think the Hunt has play. Now, the weaknesses of Cult of Speed are different to the Hunt. Cult of Speed has a I don't really have good ways to deal damage to you factor. The Hunt has I have great ways to deal damage to you and I can still put the pressure on you, but I'm low on assets. So that's interesting how they actually both have a similar interesting tempo to the game, but they have very different weaknesses. So it's actually up to you as a preference as an orc player. Do I like having the ability to threaten my enemy and actually really put a crumpet on them and advance and charge? Still advance and charge all game because the Hunt has a CP strat to advance and charge for any, snagger unit, squig hogboy unit. So you still have the ability to put pressure and fight the enemy in a good orky way and have board control, but you can actually kill them, but you're low on units because you're still having squig hogboys being too expensive. Kill rigs are, kind of still soft for their T10 and not at the point where they can be spammed because they're so big sometimes. So I don't know. I like to try to take 3, but a lot of the times it seems like 2 is the good call. 2 bricks of squigs. And there's a lot of just same on that list. Not too interesting on the flexibility of it, but it does want to implement its game plan similar to Cult of Speed. And I think, yes, that's the rise of the Cult of Speed and the Hunt. Just pressure is the name of the game right now where we're at with Orks. If people, when Thousand Suns don't like to be pressured. Death Guard don't like to be tagged up in their deployment zone and held their disembarks from their transports and having their deep strikes drop in their deployment zones, right? World Eaters want to take the initiative from you and duke it out, not necessarily have you push them into that midline board presence and further. So I do like that these armies have the ability to dig the enemy out of these really popular staging positions because it's not just the wall we're waiting on. These armies can still advance and charge, or in the Cult of Speed's case, they can still run around the corner, shoot you, and then charge you. And so I'm really looking forward to what unravels here. But speaking of unraveling, we have, like was said earlier in chat, yes, the Bully Boys have fallen way out of grace, which is interesting because a lot of the time I'm still on the fact that 2 Waaagh sounds amazing, but when the second Waaagh is very limited, then I can understand why it can seem less amazing when something like Mega Knob just so underwhelming. You can look at something like Wolfen with shields, for example, significantly faster, built-in 4-up invuln. They have the ability to do flat 3 damage in combat. Of course, they have no OC. I'm aware, but they have ways to get it. It's just very interesting that something that's only 2 attacks like that is respectable for 3 damage, but a mega knob is still sitting at 2 damage. And that's quite underwhelming. And not to mention that the amount of points that they still cost is a little bit too much. Knobs are falling into that weird spot. I do think Bully Boys and Tactical might actually switch to a degree, but I have yet to see it. It's all just my personal maybe preference in this case, because sometimes I think Knights were bringing down Bully Boys, really high toughness armies were bringing down to Bully Boys. So maybe their mix of pressure and damage can push them up a tier, but right now they're not good at trading. They're not good at actually scoring primary on the main mission. They kind of run out of assets to score reliably on the secondaries, though they will be helped by the changes in this mission pack. And so I think if they somehow did get a little bit of love, like if you started considering your breaker boys on your bully boys list, implementing something like Snagamobs or maybe even Zod, there are ways that I think bully boys can end up really making a shine, where people are really looking into these kind of jail Eiffel striking type of armies with orcs. So we'll see which of these last three I covered will kind of make it to the forefront, but it's all quite exciting, to be honest. But Bully Boys has just not shown any results, has a low player base count, and therefore most of the positive things I'm saying are known, but still speculation if they can be proven in the current meta. Just like More Dakka, right? So even though I am someone who's positive about More Dakka, I think if you're running big walkers, Dreadnought, Def Dreads, Burner Boys, big bricks of flash kits, funny guys like that, like the Shooter Boys, whatever it may be, you can have such a good time because the detachment itself isn't so restricted. So if you're looking for just straight up having fun games with your friends and you really just want to make these different units work because they're a part of your collection, they're painted, I think More Dakka has a great spot in your heart, my heart. We get a Waaagh stratagem that I've always wanted since I started playing 40K. So it does have play. It's just, what are you going to have to do to make it work at a high level competitive play, winning your local RTT, going to your local GT and performing 4-1, is going to be more of a challenge for you as an orc player than not. Most of your tools that you want have been nerfed again, and we're directly focused on again with these changes. So it's really hard to put More Dakka anywhere higher, even though I am not under the impression that it has no play at all. Totally think it has a spot. Have fun with it. I talk about More Dakka all the time when I do fix my list. I've even suggested it to certain people before these nerfs, at least. So I think More Dakka will find a way to still play the game, but it's just looking a little rough. So here's my tier list. I think for the most part, no matter who you are, if tier list 2 or 3, you're going to be getting reps in. You're going to get some teeth knocked out, but really having a good time. Because, yeah, like we're going to talk about, I can see here in chat that Cult of Speed is looking like people are pretty hyped up on that for the cost of buggies and such. So all of these things are going to take repetition, practice, commitment to really get the most out of it, which is probably why I'm so excited as an ARC player, to be honest. So this is my tier list, and that's what I got to say about that. If you want to argue with me, go ahead and leave a comment in the chat, or let me know right now because it's live, and I move on to reading the live chat. So yeah, now I have a slide for it. That way you guys know that I know that you know I'm watching you. So speaking of who I'm watching, we got Andrew Stone for 10 Waaagh Tactic gifted memberships. Whoa, to Mr. Andrew Stone. Thank you for the support. Get, as always, super supportive, very impactful. See you all the time. It's funny, even as I look to update videos and playlists and such like that, I see Andrew still supporting from months ago. We were in this position 2-3 months ago, Andrew, right, with the Dataslate. We were just talking about it, but you're still being supportive then, just like you are now. So thank you very much. But someone else who's been supportive is our Wicked Joe, who's been here since the beginning. Glad to see you're back. I've seen that you've moved in the Cult of Speed, so shout out to Wicked Joe for 10 Waaagh Tactic memberships. Whoa, because we'll be getting more of those done. More content brought to you on the membership guide. Of course, we're going to do those after action reports. I got the gear. I got the setup for it now, so now it's about practice and presentation. So let's get it, guys. Thanks to you. I appreciate the support, and much love to you guys. So give some war bosses in chat for Andrew and Wicked Joe. And let's see what's going on with you guys in chat. Yeah, like someone saying here with Cody, hey, higher AP doesn't matter against demons and things with good influence anyway. Exactly. If you're looking at Necrons who are already coming up and coming out as, hey, we exist again, we're annoying, they already have 4-up influence, right? That difference isn't going to necessarily matter. And a lot of the time you want to run in charge of them anyways, because you can always whiff on the shooting phase. You might as well go get stuck in and hold them in place if they're a Necron, right? Because they don't fight well necessarily anyways. So it's not always just the demons or whatever the most popular faction is. There's a bunch of different meta matchups. It's just that Space Marines are so popular that you're like, man, I really like when I'm -5 AP and I melt through my friend's Land Raider. It's like, yeah, me too, bro. I love it. So I get you on that. Let's see. So yeah, Dev Copters have entered the too cheap to ignore. Yes, they have. If you have those extra points, that's how I feel about it too. If you have bikers on the field already, Dev Copters, trucks, wagons, a Copta, some random other moderate toughness units, maybe some Mega Knobs, whatever it is, then you have this other unit that's T6 with the 4-up armor save, 4 wounds, that's flying around, shooting rockets. Like, what are you going to do with it? It can still run up. Like, a unit of Storm Boys might accidentally, lose a couple, well, not accidentally, but might lose a couple guys on Overwatch, and then the vehicle runs the rest of the guys over in combat. Speaking from experience, this has happened. A Death Copter will endure that, and even if one of the guys is alive, I've tagged up my target. That's a strength in itself. So I really like the cost. Death Copters are in consideration, and I actually have 18 Death Copters, and I have my Cult of Speed cooking up anyway. So it's just behind on the speed. It's behind on the hobbying, but it exists. So I'll be speaking firsthand about that. And yeah, maybe GW is beating us down because we're going to be the 11th edition box. Yeah, right. They're saying, well, we're going to keep you guys a little low, and then bring you guys all up, which is funny because I have my thoughts and ideas about what happens to us if we become the big bads of 11th edition. But that's for the future because there's so much time left on that. But I don't think GW consciously does anything. I think they're just kind of bad at doing their thing. So we have, yeah. Coptas on Gaz's back. That's so funny. Joe's trying to run a bunch of Coptas and have Gaz give him lethals. Let's see. We got. I would love that too. If Coptas got mounted, that would change things for them, boy. For interactions, they wouldn't get anti, wouldn't get secondaries. I would love that. Right now, they're just kind of annoying. And yeah, I think Cult of Speed is a sleeper. I think so too. I think it's been pushed as in it's completely irrelevant and trash. I do think that none of those buggies fight well, regardless of what people want to say, but they do have the ability to have board control, tag people up. So annoying to actually kill and commit to. Like I was speaking about the Coptas, the Puggies are another toughness higher of toughness 7, 9 wounds. It's like, sure, they're going to get hit with the Lancer, but they don't want to get hit with the other vehicles and assets and weapons that they can commit to other things already. I started Bully Boys, got everything painted up, and then I found out they kind of sucked. Yeah, but you know what Bully Boys make you do? They make you get good at the fundamentals, right? Understanding when to Waaagh, how to do combat effectively. For example, if someone has a screen up and they have a tank behind it, how to get multiple charges off on that unit. You pick it up with one of your units and then you pile into the enemy unit behind it. Bully Boys will help you kind of get used to that. Plus, answer kind of quick games as you're getting used to it. So even though it sucks in the grand scheme of like the rest of the detachment where it sits, you as a new player going into other new players, you can still put the pace on them and crump them as Bully Boys. I'm certain of that for sure. I'm gonna start doing after action reports. I'm gonna show you guys. I'm telling you, that's why I got this, because I'm doing it. But shout out to you. Can I just got here? Can you start over? Absolutely, yes. All right, guys, starting all over. No, it's kidding. Let's see, the Weed Whacker Wall with all the. All right, so with that, guys, and what's the best loadout? Thanks for that question, my boy. What's up, Jay? Much love to my boy Jay. So he says, what's the best loadout for the newest Big Mac model? I personally really, really like the Drilla. I finally have something that's strength 12, -3 AP, 3 damage. I can't let it go. But I understand if you want to use the Power Claw. That's fine. As for the shooting potential of it, I like the actual custom Mega Blaster. I think the tractor cannon is kind of cool, but it's it's just too low volume of shots. So definitely bring it. I'm not scared of Hazard. If you guys know me, I'm not scared of Hazard at all. So I don't think you should be either. But it's sick. It can be sick in the meta, right? If demons come out in your area. So there are areas. So there are moments like I just spoke about earlier where I said if you have a looted unit, you want to give the unit +1 to hit. That guy jumps out. They shoot at a greater demon. That could be pretty awesome. And get his flying off, or like a demon prince, for example. I would like that, but the context. Ultimately, generally, custom Mega Blaster is better. Goes better on multiple different units and profiles, and takes the bus better for something like a Pulsar Rocket. But yeah, let's see. Let's go. Yep. And yes, and exactly. Hazardous is just a fun. So with that being said, guys, there's so much to say. I'm so excited for the future of Orks. We have Mork Perion next week, where we're going to be talking about those beakies further in depth as the enemies of the Ork. What else we've learned from our further games of play and how we feel about where the Orks can go. I have theories, crafting to do. We have detachments to unpack and videos going forward. And of course, after action reports, kind of like battle reports, but with my twist. So with that being said, there's only one thing to keep in mind is don't cross our wall, because we'll not get T-foul. So leave a like and subscribe if we did good. If we did bad, leave a thumbs down. Let me know why, because I like to get yelled at. Whoa!